In one of the most charged press conferences of his presidency, Donald Trump declared Barack Obama unfit to lead and promised to prove it with a secret recording. The White House briefing room was already tense. Reporters clutched their pens, cameras rolled, and the air buzzed with the sense that something explosive was coming. When Trump stepped up to the podium, he didn't talk policy or foreign affairs. He went straight for his predecessor. Barack Obama was unfit to lead this country then, Trump said sharply, and he's unfit to have influence on it now. The room froze. Reporters exchanged wary glances. They had heard Trump attack Obama before, but this time felt different. Then Trump raised the stakes. "You'll hear it for yourselves," he said, signaling to a staffer who carried a laptop to the podium. "We have a recording." Obama himself. Proof. The silence was heavy. A collective breath held. Then came the crackle of speakers, and a voice every American recognized. Calm, measured, unmistakable. "Thank you all for being here today," Obama began. "I know times feel uncertain, but every conversation you have, every young person you mentor, every reminder that this country belongs to all of us, those moments shape the future. Instead of scandal, there was reassurance. Instead of betrayal, there was leadership." Reporters leaned in, frowning in confusion. Was this really the evidence Trump had promised? The recording rolled on. Obama spoke of resilience, of teachers refusing to give up on their students, of neighbors looking out for one another. His words weren't fiery. They were steady, grounding. Presidential. One cameraman, usually stone-faced, whispered under his breath, "This is moving." Trump stood stiffly at the podium, arms crossed, waiting for outrage that never came. The irony was unmissable. What he presented as proof of weakness sounded to many in the room like a reminder of strength. By the time Obama's voice reached, "Our democracy survives not because of one leader, but because of millions of voices." Refusing to give up on one another, the energy in the room had shifted completely. Reporters weren't scribbling anymore, they were simply listening. A CNN correspondent muttered to her neighbor, "If this is all he's got, this could backfire." And still, the recording played on what began as an attack was quickly becoming something else entirely, a moment where the contrast between the two presidencies spoke louder than any accusation. And then just as the press corps settled into the settee, rhythm of Obama's words, something happened that no one in that room had expected. He spoke of families who work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. The words landed heavy, and for some in the room it was impossible not to think back to Obama's speeches, measured, steady, with that rhythm that had once made him a household name. Trump, refusing to break eye contact with the press, leaned into the mic. "You hear that?" he barked. "That's what he really thinks. Weak communities, weak leadership. He wants others running the country, not the people you elect." A hand shot up in the front row. Rebecca Lynn of the Boston Globe. "Mr. President, with respect, that doesn't sound like undermining. It sounds like encouragement." Trump's face tightened. "Encouragement is weakness. We don't need soft words about neighbors. We need real leaders. And Obama has never been one." Reporters exchanged glances, some suppressing smiles. Meanwhile, the audio kept rolling. On the tape, Obama was in Detroit, answering a young leader's question. "What do we do when we feel like we can't make a difference?" Obama didn't hesitate. History is not written by cynics. It's written by those who keep pushing, even when the odds are against them. Change takes patience, persistence, and above all, belief in each other. Pens dropped. Reporters stopped scribbling and simply listened. The words weren't new. Recording had been made months ago, but they felt alive now. Trump jabbed a finger toward the press. "You call that leadership?" That's weakness. That's telling young people to stay quiet. A voice from the back cut an Anthony Ross of Reuters. Sir, with respect, he's saying the opposite. He's saying, persistence matters. Are you sure this is the right clip? For the first time, frustration flickered across Trump's face. You people will twist anything to protect him. The truth is right here on tape. But Obama's voice was still spilling through the speakers. Leadership isn't about tearing others down to prove your strength. It's about lifting people up so they can carry the torch when you're gone. The room stirred murmurs, raised brows, even nods. Trump's aides along the wall looked uneasy. What was meant as an attack was landing like a gift. Rebecca Lynn leaned toward a colleague. If anything, he just gave Obama free airtime. On the recording, Obama's voice delivered one last line. America is not the sum of its divisions. It's the measure of how we rise above them together. The silence that followed wasn't agreement with Trump. It was disbelief. Then, suddenly, Trump slapped the laptop shut. Enough. You've heard it. Now you know the truth. But the truth in that room wasn't his. Reporters exchanged glances. Some whispering that he had just handed Obama the biggest PR victory of the year, and before Trump even moved on to his next talking point. The story had already escaped the briefing room. Clips of the recording were flooding social media. Cable networks cut into programming. Control rooms barked orders. Run it again. Run it again. The irony was impossible to ignore. The attack wasn't damaging Obama, it was hurting Trump. Twitter lit up first. Hashtags like hashtag Cha Obama tape and hashtag Leadership Matters shot straight to the top of the trending list. Clips of Obama's voice, leadership isn't about tearing others down. It's about lifting people up. We're all ready. Stitched into TikTok videos, laid over images of teachers in Cleveland classrooms, volunteers at Houston food banks, and nurses in Des Moines hospitals. On Instagram, a young woman in Phoenix wrote, "Say what you want about politics, but these words still give me hope." Thousands echoed the same thought. This doesn't sound like weakness. It sounds like exactly what we've been missing. In Toledo, Ohio, truck driver Alan Pierce shook his head from his recliner as CNN replayed the clip. "I didn't even vote for the guy back then," he muttered. "But damned, that sounds like a leader." His wife Carol kept folding laundry, but nodded, compared to what we've been hearing lately. Night and day. In Phoenix, high school senior Danielle Morales played the clip for her mom while sitting cross-legged on the couch. "See, Mom. This is what we were talking about in class. He's telling us we matter." Her mother paused from chopping vegetables. Listening, then whispered, "He's not even president anymore, but he still sounds like one." The irony was sharp. The recording Trump thought would sink Obama was instead being embraced as a reminder of dignity and steadiness. People weren't hearing weakness, they were hearing hope. Not everyone agreed. In a diner off Route 66 in Amarillo, a man in a baseball cap slammed his mug on the table. "Don't you get it? He's trying to sound noble, but it's all about control." That's what Trump warned us about. His friend stirred his coffee, then shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe he's just saying, we've got to believe in each other. Doesn't sound so bad to me. Arguments like that spread everywhere: barbershops, campuses, factory lunchrooms. The words had landed. People had to decide what they meant. Inside the White House, Trump's staff huddled grimly. The clip had already aired on every network. Pollsters warned the optics were disastrous. "We gave him a microphone," one aide muttered, and he stole the room. Back in Chicago, Obama hadn't commented. Friends said he wasn't surprised. He'd spoken those words in Detroit to community leaders, never meant for broadcast, just encouragement. Now that encouragement was echoing across the nation in Detroit. 23-year-old Malika Foster, who had been in the audience that day, posted a video. He looked us straight in the eyes. It didn't feel like politics, it felt like someone telling us not to give up on ourselves. And now the whole world gets to hear it. Her clip spread fast. By nightfall, even late-night comedians were in on it. Trump tried to drop a bomb on Obama. One grinned into the camera, but it turned out to be a bouquet. The audience roared. By midnight, the story wasn't about whether Obama was unfit. It was about how Trump had handed him the stage and Obama's words had stolen the country's attention. Analysts were already calling it one of the most stunning political backfires in years. But the real test wasn't in the headlines or #ZIT, was in how ordinary Americans would carry those words into the next day's conversations. And what they might mean for the days ahead. The morning after the press conference, the White House briefing room still carried the faint smell of stale coffee and tension. Reporters filed in early, buzzing with disbelief over what they'd witnessed. Some replayed the clip for colleagues who hadn't been in the room, shaking their heads as though the moment still didn't feel real. Trump had stood tall, convinced he'd finally exposed Barack Obama. But instead of scandal, what poured through? The speaker's was a voice that was steady, thoughtful, layered with the same composure people once associated with leadership. In one corner, Laura Bennett of the Philadelphia Inquirer was overheard telling her editor, "I don't think you understand." When that tape played, it didn't land like an attack, it landed like a sermon on hope. The tape had run just under 7 minutes before Trump cut it short. But those 7 minutes replayed endlessly in the minds of everyone who heard them. Reporters leaned back in their chairs, exchanging bewildered glances, unsure whether they were covering a scandal or a resurrection. Anthony Ross of Reuters later recalled, "Usually when the president makes an accusation, the room erupts, questions, interruptions, chaos. But when Obama's voice came on, everything stopped. People just listened. Even in the moment, reactions slipped through. Cameras caught Rebecca Lynn of the Boston Globe scribbling just 3 words in her notebook. This is leadership. That image went viral before the press conference even ended. Her words turned into a meme that only amplified Trump's unintended gift. Cable news ran split screens all night. Obama's calm, measured remarks on one side, Trump's expressionless face on the other. Pundits debated whether Trump had misunderstood the tape or if aides had badly miscalculated. But the effect was undeniable. Obama didn't look tarnished. He looked renewed. At a coffee shop in Omaha, a group of college students huddled around, a laptop replaying the footage. "Look at his face," one pointed at Trump. "He thinks he's landing a knockout punch, but he's just giving the other guy the microphone." His friend shook her head. "It's like handing your opponent the spotlight in the middle of a fight." Inside the White House, aides scrambled. A pre-dawn press release tried to spin the audio as proof of Obama's interference in national affairs, but the language read defensive. By the time it landed in inboxes, the narrative was already set. Trump's smoking gun had become Obama's spotlight moment. Even conservative voices struggled. On a Dallas radio show, longtime host Carl Denton admitted, "I don't know what the president thought he was proving." That didn't sound like a man undermining America, it sounded like a man trying to hold it together. By evening, headlines carried words like misfire, backfire, and political resurrection. Reporters who had been in the room wrote personal accounts, each echoing the same disbelief. The most telling sign came not from pundits, but from the press corps itself. Normally, after a White House briefing, reporters scattered quickly to file their stories. This time, they lingered on the steps outside, clustered in small groups, replaying the audio over and over. The debate wasn't about whether Obama looked bad, it was whether Trump had just handed him a comeback. "Do you think he even realized what he was playing?" one journalist asked. Another shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Everyone's already writing it their own way." The irony was unmistakable. Donald Trump, a man who thrived on controlling the narrative, had just surrendered it to the very voice he wanted silenced. That night, Obama's words slipped out of the White House and into classrooms, kitchens, and break rooms. The press amplified them, but the public carried them further. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Calm, deliberate. Stripped of the theatrics politics usually demands. In Akron, Maria Delgado replayed the clip on her phone during lunch. Her co-workers leaned in, sandwiches half unwrapped, as Obama's voice filled the break room. When it ended, one sighed. "That's different from what we usually hear." Maria nodded. "Feels like someone talking to us, not at us." The shock. Wave wasn't in poll numbers yet. It was in conversations, in throwaway comments, in the way people were quoting a man who wasn't even running. By morning, those 7 minutes had reached millions. Twitter rebranded, X-erupted. Memes spread faster than official statements. One viral split screen showed Obama's line, "Leadership isn't about tearing others down," alongside Trump scowling at a podium. It was shared hundreds of thousands of times. A hashtag emerged. Hashtag strengthen words. On TikTok, creators stitched Obama's voice over everyday grit. A single mother in Tulsa packing lunches before her second shift. A Milwaukee janitor locking up at dawn. Comments poured in. "This hits harder than any campaign ad." Instagram Reels joined in. A Sacramento basketball coach layered Obama's words over his players' running drills, captioning it, "This is what leadership sounds like." Within hours, tens of thousands liked it. But YouTube turned the spark into a blaze. Dozens of channels reposted the full clip, some with commentary, some untouched. Views soared into the millions. The comment sections swelled with nostalgia, frustration, admiration. One user wrote, "Say what you want, but this man could speak." Another shot back, "Don't be fooled, words are cheap." The arguments only pushed the clip further. At dinner tables and diners, it became unavoidable. In Columbus, Ohio, 63-year-old Janice Walker played the audio for her grandkids. When it ended, her 12-year-old granddaughter whispered, "Why doesn't the president talk like that?" Janice had no answer. In a Kansas diner, truckers sparred over its meaning. One called it manipulation. Another shook his head, sipping coffee. "Nah," he muttered. "That's just what it sounds like when a leader believes in people." Their waitress chimed in without breaking stride. "Sounds better than anything I've heard in years." The clip wasn't just audio anymore. It was a mirror forcing Americans to ask what they actually wanted from leadership. For some, it reignited admiration. For others, suspicion. But it had people talking. Conservative talk radio warned listeners not to be duped by pretty speeches. Progressive podcasts called it a reminder of what leadership once sounded like. Even late-night comedians joined in. Trump tried to cast Obama as the villain, but America heard Morgan Freeman narrating a hope commercial. The audience roared. But the online storm outgrew the jokes. Obama's words were spliced into motivational edits, quoted in graduation speeches, printed on posters taped to lockers. Teachers played the clip in civics classes. Pastors wove it into sermons. Trump's team scrambled, insisting the tape proved Obama was meddling, but their pushback was drowned out. The internet had already decided its own meaning, one they couldn't control. Back in Detroit, where the recording had first been made, the young leaders who'd sat in that room months earlier felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. Malika Foster, a 24, whose Facebook post about the meeting had gone viral, told a local station, "We were just talking about making a difference in our neighborhoods. None of us thought those words would end up playing in the White House. Now everyone's talking about it. That's surreal." Her friend Jamal added, "When he said history isn't written by cynics, it felt like he was speaking straight to me. And now people everywhere are hearing it. That means something." What Trump had tried to frame as weakness was suddenly being heard by millions as vision. No press release could smother it. No cable spin could bend it. Not even Trump's own. Social posts could drown it out. By the end of the day, polls weren't in yet, but sentiment was shifting. In classrooms, living rooms, and offices, Obama's words were being quoted, argued over, replayed carrying further than anyone, including him, had expected. The real test wasn't online. It was face-to-face, around kitchen tables, across lunch counters. In the pauses of everyday life where people leaned in and asked, "What do you think about that tape?" For once, the conversation wasn't confined to Washington or cable news. It was in neighborhoods, small towns, and big cities woven into the texture of ordinary life. In a Dayton laundromat, two women folded clothes while the machines hummed. One replayed the clip and shook her head. "I don't care what side you're on. Those words make sense. That's the kind of thing I wish my kids heard more of." The other, skeptical, shrugged. Words don't pay bills. Actions do. Yet even she admitted the words had a pull. In a diner outside Tulsa, 4 truck drivers crowded a booth. Over steaming eggs and bacon, they argued. Pete leaned in when he said, "History's not written by cynics." That hit me. Reminded me of my old man. Worked the plant 40 years, never gave up. Carl smirked. "You're getting soft, Pete. Talking ain't leading." But even Carl couldn't look away as the clip played again on the corner TV dot in a Fresno high school. A history teacher paused her lesson, played the video, and asked, "So what does leadership sound like to you?" A boy in the back said, "It sounds like someone actually cares if we make it." Another added, "It's not about politics. It's about believing in people." In Madison, Wisconsin, the Whitakers sat at their dinner table, half-finished, plates in front of them. After the clip ended, their teenage daughter said quietly, "That doesn't sound unfit. That sounds steady." Her father, a lifelong Republican, stabbed at his potatoes. Steady doesn't mean right, but his missing? Fire said more than his words. Barbershops, beauty salons, checkout lines, the tape threaded its way everywhere. People weren't all agreeing, but they were listening. And that mattered. For many, it wasn't even about Obama anymore. It was about remembering a tone of leadership they hadn't heard in years. In an Albuquerque diner, older veterans swapped. Stories about speeches that once kept them going. On a Boston subway, a young woman played the audio on speaker. Strangers pressed shoulder to shoulder, went quiet. Some closing their eyes as if the voice was less politics than memory. But anger surfaced too. In a Fort Worth VFW hall, men erupted at the TV when the clip aired again. One slammed his beer down, foam spilling over the rim. "This is garbage. They're trying to make him a saint. A tease, not one of us never was." His friend shot back. "Maybe not." The debate carried on. What mattered was that the debate existed at all. You had to admit the man could speak. That's why people listened. What started as a heated barroom debate nearly erupted into a shouting match before the bartender cut in, grumbling that politics always spoiled a good night. Still, the exchange revealed something deeper. People weren't tuning out. They weren't scrolling past or changing the channel. They were pausing. And in a country where attention was fractured and news cycles vanished in hours, that pause meant something. Back in Detroit, young leaders who'd been in the room for the original speech were suddenly fielding calls from national outlets. Malika Foster, who had posted her reaction online, found herself on NPR. "It didn't feel like he was speaking to us because we were special," she explained. "It felt like he was reminding us all of us matter. That's why it's hitting." So many people, it wasn't about him, it was about us. Her friend Jamal echoed the sentiment in another interview. "We didn't clap because he was a president. We clapped because he was honest." That's rare. Across the country, Living rooms replayed the speech, sometimes aloud, sometimes quietly, just for themselves. The words weren't fading. They were spreading, and in Washington, the fallout had begun. Inside the White House, what was meant to be a decisive strike against Barack Obama was unraveling into something else entirely. By late afternoon, the West Wing buzzed with urgency advisors, pacing with phones pressed to their ears, laptops open, news feeds streaming. On screen, Obama's words rolled beneath headlines like backfire, and Obama sounds presidential. "Mr. President," one advisor began carefully, "the coverage isn't matching the message we wanted." Trump leaned back, arms folded, his face red. "Fake news. All of it. They twist everything. I showed them proof, and they make him look good. Disgraceful." A younger aide glanced up from her phone. "Sir, it's not just the networks. Social media's running with this. Hashtags, memes, TikToks. The clip is viral. It's framing Obama as the adult in the room." Trump slammed the table, rattling pens. "Viral for the wrong reasons. They should be talking about how he's meddling, not how nice his voice sounds. You people don't know how to control a story." The room fell silent. No one wanted to admit the truth. The story was already out of their hands. On CNN, analysts replayed the clip side by side with Trump's reaction. "This was supposed to be a hammer," one strategist said, but it turned into a spotlight. It highlighted Obama's steadiness instead of any supposed wrongdoing. Even Fox News was split. Some anchors tried framing the speech as interference. But one commentator conceded, the words themselves don't sound undermining. They sound like a pep talk hand. That's what people are responding to. In the Situation Room, an advisor finally risked it. "Sir, with all respect, this wasn't the right recording to use. If we'd previewed it," Trump cut him off. "Don't blame me. Somebody told me this was gold. Said it would prove he was weak. If it doesn't look that way, it's because the media protects him. Like always. But the damage was undeniable." By evening, overnight polls showed Obama's favorability jumping 5 points higher among independents. The clip had humanized him to voters who had long tuned out. "This isn't about politics," one analyst explained on air. "It's about tone. Americans are starved for someone who sounds calm, steady, reassuring." And the irony? Trump handed that voice to them himself. Inside the West Wing, aides whispered about strategy. Should they double down, attack harder, or pivot and drop it? Either path carried risk. Abandon it, and Trump looked defeated. Push it, and the clip spread even further. At the press briefing, the press secretary faced a barrage. If this was supposed to show Obama's weakness, one reporter asked, "Why does it sound like a motivational speech?" The non-answer only deepened the impression. That night, Trump unleashed a torrent of tweets accusing the media of romanticizing Obama. But the tweets didn't trend. The clip did, and outside Washington, it traveled in unexpected ways. A Denver fitness coach used it as the soundtrack to a motivational reel. A pastor in Ohio built a sermon around it. In St. Louis, a local band mixed it into a live set. What was meant to end Obama's relevance had instead revived his voice and made it echo louder than it had in years. The clip didn't just go viral, it was remixed into a song that shot up the SoundCloud charts. Trump's team could spin all they wanted, but the truth was plain. The recording had slipped beyond their control. It wasn't a political weapon anymore. It had become a cultural moment. By midnight, an exhausted aide slumped outside the Oval Office and muttered, "We gave him a platform, and he turned it into a pulpit." Her colleague shook her head. "No, we gave him a platform, and the people turned it into one." While the White House scrambled, attention shifted to Chicago, where Barack Obama was expected to weigh in. His words, everyone knew, could tilt the scales. On the South Side, the media frenzy was relentless. Camera crews camped outside the Obama Foundation headquarters, bracing against the cold Lake Michigan wind. Inside, Obama sat in a modest conference room, jacket off, sleeves rolled neatly. Aides fielded non-stop calls from journalists and allies. Pressing for his response, he had watched the clip spread with the same measured calm that defined his presidency. He hadn't asked for it to go viral, but he understood why it had. "Mr. President," one aide said carefully, "networks are running this non-stop. Social media is framing it as a leadership contrast. If you don't speak, they'll fill in the blanks for you." Obama leaned back, fingers steepled. "If I respond, it can't be about me," he said quietly. "It has to be about the country, about what we owe each other." Speculations swirled. Would he take a direct shot at Trump, brush it off, or let silence do the talking? His choice was understated. A press release announced he would deliver a short statement from his Chicago home, streamed online. No stage, no spectacle. Just a man with a camera. At 8 p.m. sharp, millions tuned in. Families huddled in living rooms. Students watched on laptops. Truckers streamed it from dashboards at rest stops. The screen faded in. Obama at a simple desk, bookshelves behind him. His tone was calm, deliberate. "Over the past few days, a recording of mine has been shared widely. It wasn't meant for the world stage. It was a private conversation with young leaders in Detroit. But since it's out there, I want to speak to all of you. What you heard wasn't strategy. It wasn't an attack. It was simply the truth. As I see it, that America is stronger when we lift each other up. That democracy only works if we believe in one another. That leadership isn't measured by how loudly we talk, but by how faithfully we listen." Across the country, people leaned closer. In Cleveland, a retired teacher turned the volume up. In Phoenix, students sat cross-legged on a dorm floor. In Atlanta, a father muted his phone and hushed his kids. "I know these are polarized times," Obama continued, "and I know not everyone agrees with me. That's okay. But when leaders use division to score points, everybody loses. My message has always been simple. We don't move forward by tearing each other down. We move forward by lifting one another up." Not once did he mention Trump's name. He didn't need to. The contrast was clear without it. Then he leaned slightly closer. "And to young people hearing my voice maybe for the first time outside of a classroom or a clip, don't let cynicism tell you your voice doesn't matter. Don't let anyone convince you democracy is someone else's responsibility. It belongs to you, to all of us." The speech lasted under 8 minutes. No theatrics, no raised voice. Just a quiet, pointed reminder of the message that carried him into office years ago. He closed simply. "That's all I wanted to say. Thank you and keep believing in each other." The live stream ended. No Q&A, no fireworks. Just silence. But across the nation, that silence filled with conversation. In diners, people clapped at muted TVs. In dorms, students replayed and reacted. On social media, #spread #keep believing trended within the hour. Even some critics admitted it. The restraint was the power. A conservative columnist in Dallas admitted, "I disagree with Obama on policy, but that was one of the most disciplined responses I've ever seen. He didn't attack, he didn't grandstand. He simply reminded people of what they miss." Inside, the White House aides watched the live stream in silence. One leaned over and whispered, "That's it. 8 minutes and he's taken the narrative back." Trump, meanwhile, was reportedly furious, storming between offices and demanding to know why networks were replaying Obama's remarks non-stop. But by then, the story wasn't his anymore. The real impact came the next morning. Overnight polls told the tale. Independents were shifting, and Obama's favorability had jumped sharply. One survey showed a 12-point surge among Americans. Under 35. Many saying the address left them feeling hopeful for the first time in years. The White House tried damage control. Trump's press secretary insisted the former president is manipulating the public with flowery speeches. The current president is focused on results. But when a reporter asked why Trump's approval had dipped in the very same polls, the briefing ended abruptly. Across the country, the speech sparked unexpected conversations. In Pittsburgh, a retired steelworker told a local reporter, "I don't care who you vote for when a man speaks like that. It stirs something in you." In Seattle, a young entrepreneur posted a video, "I wasn't old enough to vote for him, but hearing that reminded me what leadership used to feel like." Trump's donors were no calmer. Behind closed doors in Manhattan, one leaned across a mahogany table and muttered, "We can't afford mistakes like this. The optics are terrible." Another corrected him, "Optics. This is erosion." Every attack just gives the other guy oxygen. Cable networks seized the moment. MSNBC called Obama's remarks steady leadership. CNN labeled it a contrast moment. Even Fox News cracked, with one anchor conceding, restraint worked, he didn't need to say much to come out on top. The ripples spread to Congress. Privately, some Republicans fumed that Trump had handed Democrats a gift. One aide leaked frustrations about the president's instincts, sparking headlines of their own. But the bigger shift was cultural. In Milwaukee, a group of young professionals debated over coffee. One guy shouts, the other reminds you why you care. Another compared it to a job interview. One candidate rants, the other speaks with calm authority. Who would you hire? The streets of Philadelphia, a small rally formed spontaneously. Homemade signs quoted Obama's words, "History is not written by cynics." A grandmother held up one that read, "Keep believing." Smiling into a local news camera, she said, "He's not even running, but he's giving us hope again." Inside the West Wing, the mood only worsened. Advisors drafted talking points, but nothing stuck. One aide described Trump pacing the Oval Office, muttering that the media was crowning Obama all over again. Late-night comedians piled on. One host played Obama's speech side by side with Trump's angry tweets before quipping, "It's like someone tried to play a horror film but hit the motivational playlist instead." The audience roared, and by morning, the joke was trending yet beneath the laughter. A serious question was taking hold. What kind of leadership do Americans actually want? The constant confrontation of Trump, or the calm reassurance they'd just been reminded of? As one political science professor at the University of Michigan concluded in an op-ed, Trump tried to expose Obama. Instead, he exposed the contrast. He tapped into something deeper hunger Americans still carry for leaders who remind them of their better selves. And in doing so, Obama gained what every politician secretly craves: relevance. The ripple spread fast. European outlets framed it as Obama's surprise returned to the spotlight. Canadian papers pointed out the irony. Trump, in trying to diminish his rival, had only amplified him. Suddenly, the story wasn't just national, it was global. By week's end, Washington was buzzing with a single question: was Obama preparing to step back into politics? His aides swore he wasn't, but the speculation refused to die. Inside the White House, one weary advisor muttered, "We gave him a second act without even meaning to." The reply was blunt, and the worst part, he didn't even ask for it. But beyond the political chatter, the real impact wasn't in polls or headlines. It was in the quiet lesson people took away: the difference between tearing down and building up. Most controversies flare bright, then fade into the churn of the next news cycle. But not this one. The image of Trump slamming a laptop shut in. Frustration, paired with Obama's calm cadence still echoing across the country, lingered longer than anyone expected. Why? 'Cause it wasn't about rivalry. It wasn't about Democrats or Republicans. It was about ordinary people, families in small towns. Students in crowded classrooms, retirees in quiet suburbs, pausing to ask a simple question: what does real leadership sound like? In Miami, a Cuban-American grandfather rocked on his porch, while his granddaughter replayed the speech on her phone. She asked, "Abuelo, why are people fighting about this?" He thought for a moment, then said, "Because when someone speaks to the heart, even their enemies can't control it." Was the truth. Trump had tried to bury Obama. Instead, he amplified him. The speech wasn't flashy. It wasn't even meant for broadcast. And that was the point. Its authenticity was what struck so deep in Detroit, where those words were first spoken. Young leaders who'd heard them firsthand still carried a sense of pride. Malika, who had gone viral sharing clips, told her community, "Leadership doesn't always mean winning arguments. Sometimes it just means reminding people they matter." Heads nodded, not in political agreement, but in recognition of something human. Even critics admitted the moment carried weight. A conservative radio host in Ohio told his listeners, "Look, I don't like the guy's policies, but if we're being honest, the way he handled this, hard to deny it landed." The phone lines lit up. Angry callers, supportive ones. But the fact they were even wrestling with it said everything. That week revealed more about America than about either man. It showed how quickly anger backfires when it meets vision. How words meant simply to encourage can outlive their moment, taking root in unexpected places. And above all, how strength isn't measured by volume, but by calm conviction. Columnists scrambled for metaphors, a political boomerang. A match in the dark that only revealed who was really holding the torch. But outside the headlines, in churches, schools, living rooms, the lesson was simpler. One pastor in Indianapolis summed it up: tearing down your neighbor may make you feel strong for a moment. Lifting them up makes you remembered. That's what happened. Trump's attack didn't define Obama. It defined Trump by contrast. Obama's words reminded people of something they'd been missing: steadiness, reassurance, a voice that believed in them more than in itself. And the moral was plain. Leaders who use their platform to divide might win the moment, but leaders who use it to encourage, their words last far longer than applause. Weeks later, the recording was still circulating. Seniors quoted it in graduation speeches. Coaches taped it to locker room walls. Families referenced it in everyday conversations. It had outlived its moment and slipped into public memory. That was the irony. Trump had tried to strip Obama of relevance. Instead, he gave him something far harder to erase: resonance. For millions who listened. Whether they agreed with Obama or not, the takeaway was clear. Strength isn't proven by declaring others unfit. It's proven by reminding people why. They maintain why they shouldn't give up on each other. And maybe that's where this story ends. Not in the hashtags, not in the shouting on cable news, but in the question it left behind. What kind of leadership do we truly want to follow? Because whether you lean left, right, or somewhere in between, one truth is universal. Words can tear down, or words can build up. One fades with a headline, the other lasts for a generation. So if this moment struck you, stay with us. Subscribe to Saturday, because the most powerful lessons aren't always in what's said against someone, but in what's revealed about all of us.